Picture a vast, sun-scorched desert stretching endlessly under a merciless sky. Camel caravans, like fragile threads, snake across the horizon. They are laden with shimmering bolts of silk that catch the light like liquid gold. These travelers brave blistering sands, treacherous mountain passes, and lurking bandits, all for the promise of unimaginable wealth at their journey's end. This is no mere path. It is the Silk Road, the world's most valuable route. It was a network that didn't just connect empires, but forged the very fabric of human civilization. Yet behind its romantic allure lies a hidden story of ambition, betrayal, and transformation that reshaped the globe in ways we still feel today. Our tale begins over 2 millennia ago in the heart of ancient China during the Han Dynasty. Around 130 BCE, Emperor Wu, a visionary ruler obsessed with expanding his domain, dispatched his envoy Zhang Qian on a daring mission westward. Zhang's official goal was to forge alliances against the nomadic Gongnu tribes who relentlessly threatened China's northern borders. But what he discovered was a gateway to a world previously unknown to the Han court. He found fertile valleys in Central Asia, bustling markets in Persia, and heard whispers of a powerful empire far to the west, a place called Rome. This single expedition, though failing in its primary military objective, unwittingly opened the floodgates for trade. It connected Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, with the Mediterranean world. This route was never a single paved highway. Instead, it was a complex web of trails, a network of arteries stretching over 4,000 miles. It crossed the deadly, shifting dunes of the Taklamakan Desert, climbed the icy heights of the Pamir Mountains, and found respite in the fertile oasis cities of Samarkand and Bukhara. As these routes solidified, goods began to flow, and one commodity quickly emerged as the absolute star: silk. This was China's most closely guarded secret, a luxurious fabric produced from the cocoons of silkworms using techniques completely unknown to the rest of the world. For centuries, the Chinese held a monopoly on its production. When silk first reached the West, it caused an absolute sensation. The elites of the Roman Empire, from senators to noblewomen, craved this impossibly soft and lustrous fabric. They were willing to pay fortunes for it, trading away vast amounts of gold and silver. Roman historians like Pliny the Elder even complained about the moral decay caused by see-through silk garments and the immense drain of wealth from the empire's treasury. In return for their precious silk, China received goods it desperately needed, like the strong, fast horses from the Fergana Valley, essential for building up their cavalry to fight the Gongnu. They also imported precious metals, glass from Rome, and exotic spices from the East. But the Silk Road was never just a highway for merchandise. It was a vibrant conduit for ideas, cultures, and beliefs. As merchants traveled, they carried their philosophies and faiths with them. Buddhist monks from India trekked eastward, carrying sacred scriptures and teachings. They braved the same dangers as the traders, and their efforts led to Buddhism taking deep root in Chinese soil, forever changing its cultural and spiritual landscape. Following in their footsteps, Nestorian Christians established communities and remote outposts along the route, bringing their faith as far as the Tang capital. Art itself was transformed. In the Kushan Empire, which bridged India and Central Asia, a unique style known as Greco-Buddhist art emerged. Here, sculptures of the Buddha were created with Apollo-like features and draped in Hellenistic-style robes, stunning testament to the cultural alchemy brewing along this global crossroads. Sadly, this exchange was not always positive. Diseases also hitchhiked on these caravans. It is now widely believed that the bubonic plague, the Black Death that would devastate Europe in the 14th century, traveled from Asia along these very trade routes, a grim reminder of the interconnectedness the Silk Road had created. During its early centuries, the route thrived under the stability of large, powerful empires. The Parthian Empire in Persia acted as the crucial middleman, positioned perfectly between the Roman West and the Chinese East. They controlled a massive section of the route, taxing the caravans that passed through their territory and amassing incredible wealth. The stability they provided was essential for the safe passage of goods. To the east, the Kushan Empire played a similar role, ensuring the flow of trade between India, Central Asia, and China. In this era, trade volumes surged. Estimates suggest that thousands of tons of goods moved along these paths every year. This constant flow of commerce fueled an economic boom in the oasis cities that dotted the route. Places like Dunhuang became major hubs, where cave temples were built and decorated with magnificent murals. These artworks are a living record of the time, depicting merchants with their camels, noble patrons, and pilgrims from distant lands. Yet prosperity always bred peril. Immense wealth being transported made the caravans a tempting target for bandits who preyed on isolated convoys in the vast unguarded wilderness. The political landscape was just as dangerous. Shifting alliances could turn trusted partners into adversaries overnight, disrupting trade and plunging entire regions into conflict. The collapse of the Han Dynasty in 220 CE was a major blow. China fragmented and control over its western territories was lost, making the eastern end of the Silk Road far more chaotic. But the route was like a living organism. It adapted and endured. Even without a single dominant power, local kingdoms and Sogdian merchants kept the trade alive. By the 7th century, under the powerful and unified Tang Dynasty, the Silk Road entered its golden age. China was more open to the world than ever before. Its capital, Chang'an, became one of the most cosmopolitan cities on earth. It was a melting pot where foreign traders from Arabia, Persia, and even the Byzantine Empire were a common sight. Women of the court wore fashionable silk gowns, influenced by Central Asian styles, while Sogdian merchants, the master traders of the Silk Road, bartered furs and spices in the bustling markets. Poets like Li Bai immortalized the romance and wonder of the route in their verses, writing about the distant lands and exotic peoples encountered by travelers. This was an era of unprecedented cultural exchange and economic prosperity. But beneath this glittering splendor, the seeds of future conflict were being sown. Rival powers like the rising Tibetan Empire and the newly formed Islamic Caliphate began to vie for control over these incredibly lucrative arteries of trade. The Golden Age was magnificent, but it couldn't last forever. As the Tang Dynasty faded, a new storm was brewing on the steppes. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan and his Mongol hordes thundered across Asia, creating the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. Now, you might think this upheaval would destroy the Silk Road, but instead, it breathed new life into it. Under Mongol rule, a period of enforced peace known as the Pax Mongolica began. Suddenly, the dangerous overland routes became safer than they had been in centuries. Caravans traveled under the watchful eye of the empire, with imperial protection and standardized tolls, making the journey smoother and more predictable. This era reached its zenith with a certain Venetian adventurer you might have heard of, Marco Polo. From 1271 to 1295, he journeyed across the entire length of the Silk Road, eventually reaching the opulent court of Kublai Khan. His famous travelogue, The Travels of Marco Polo, was more than just a diary. It was a blockbuster that ignited the European imagination, painted a vivid picture of the East as a land of unimaginable wealth and wonders. A place where cities were paved with gold and emperors commanded vast armies. His stories created a powerful mystique around the Orient that would fuel European exploration for centuries to come. Economically, the Silk Road during this period was an absolute powerhouse. It wasn't just about silk anymore. Spices, tea, and delicate porcelain flowed out of China. India sent ivory, cotton, and dazzling gems westward. From the Mediterranean came glass, fine textiles, and wine. The middlemen, especially those in the great Central Asian city-states, became fabulously wealthy. Cities like Samarkand, under the rule of Timur, transformed into breathtaking centers of architecture, art, and learning, jewels of the desert. The economic ripples of this trade were felt across the globe. In Europe, the insatiable demand for Eastern luxuries spurred incredible innovations, particularly in cartography and navigation, as people sought better ways to reach these fabled lands. In China, the massive influx of silver from the West helped bolster its currency system. And back in Europe, the arrival of these new goods profoundly influenced everything from fashion to food, laying some of the cultural and economic groundwork for the Renaissance. It was a truly interconnected world, long before the internet. But this golden age couldn't last forever. By the late 14th century, the mighty Mongol Empire began to fracture. Without a single power to enforce peace, the old instabilities returned. In the west, the rising Ottoman Turks started to clash with the Persian Safavids, and both powers began imposing heavy tariffs on the caravans passing through their lands, squeezing the profits out of the overland trade. At the same time, a new threat emerged, not from the land, but from the sea. In 1498, the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama successfully navigated around Africa to reach India. This pioneering voyage opened up a direct maritime route to the east, one that could bypass the political turmoil and heavy taxes of the overland Silk Road. Suddenly, ships seemed like a much more appealing option. They could carry more cargo, avoid the harsh weather of the deserts and mountains, and steer clear of the political upheavals that constantly plagued the land routes. The great land-based empires of the time, like the Mughals in India and the Safavids in Persia, also began to turn inward. Their focus shifted from facilitating international trade to consolidating their own power and managing their vast territories. As a result, by the 15th century, the Silk Road's vitality had begun to ebb. The grand continent-spanning trade dwindled, reduced to a series of smaller, regional exchanges. The age of isolationism was dawning, and the once thriving arteries of global commerce began to quiet down. When we analyze the mechanics of the Silk Road, it's clear just how sophisticated this system was. Dotted along the paths every 20 to 30 miles were caravanserais fortified inns that provided rest, food, and crucial security for merchants and their precious cargo. The real heroes of the journey were the camels, the legendary ships of the desert. These incredible animals could carry up to 500 pounds each and endure weeks without water, making long-distance desert travel possible. The entire network was funded by a complex system of taxation and tolls, which paid for infrastructure and protection. And at the heart of it all were the traders themselves, particularly the multilingual Sogdian merchants from Central Asia. They were the ultimate cultural brokers, bridging languages, religions, and customs to keep the goods moving. From an economic perspective, it was a classic example of comparative advantage. China held a monopoly on silk production, and the profits were astronomical. It's estimated that by the time Chinese silk reached Rome, it sold for over 100 times its original production cost. But it wasn't just goods that traveled. The Silk Road was also a conduit for ideas and technology. Papermaking, for instance, journeyed from China to the Islamic world, where it completely revolutionized the preservation and spread of knowledge. Beyond the economics and politics, the human stakes of the Silk Road were profound. For the nomadic peoples of the steppes, collecting tolls from caravans was a primary means of survival. For countless others, the route meant a life of forced labor, particularly for slaves sent to work in the mines that supplied the precious metals and gems traded along the way. Women also played significant, though often overlooked, roles. Some were savvy traders and merchants in their own right, managing caravans and negotiating deals. Others became diplomatic pawns, married off to foreign rulers in alliances designed to seal trade pacts and ensure safe passage. There was also a hidden cost to all this activity: the environmental strain. Centuries of caravans and their animals led to overgrazing and deforestation, leaving scars on the landscape that are still visible today. Yet for all its complexities and costs, the Silk Road did something remarkable. It bound disparate peoples together, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the heart of China. It created a shared heritage, a tapestry woven from countless different cultures, languages, and beliefs. It proved that even in a world of diversity and distance, connection is not just possible, but essential. Fast forward to today, and the Silk Road's legacy is pulsing with new life. In the 21st century, China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, has revived this ancient network on a truly colossal scale. Launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, this ambitious project isn't just a nostalgic nod to the past. It's a massive multi-trillion-dollar undertaking to reshape global trade and influence. The BRI spans over 140 countries, weaving a web of modern infrastructure that echoes the historical connections of its predecessor. Think about it. We're talking about new ports, high-speed railways, and sprawling highways designed to connect Asia with Africa and Europe. Economically, the goal is to supercharge trade. For example, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. A flagship project of the BRI aims to dramatically slash transit times for goods and create countless jobs along its route. It's a vision of seamless connectivity where goods can flow faster and more efficiently than ever before. But this grand vision isn't without its shadows. The BRI has faced a chorus of criticism, with many observers raising concerns about what they call debt trap diplomacy. The story of Sri Lanka's Hambantota port is often cited as a cautionary tale. After struggling to repay the loans for the port's construction, Sri Lanka handed over the port to a Chinese state-owned company on a 99-year lease. This incident ignited a fierce debate about sovereignty and the long-term costs of these massive infrastructure deals. With some critics labeling it a form of neocolonialism, are these projects truly partnerships, or are they tools for extending influence? The question hangs heavy over the entire initiative. The modern relevance of these land-based routes has never been clearer, especially when you look at the vulnerabilities of our global supply chains. Remember the chaos in 2021 when the Suez Canal was blocked by a single container ship? The world held its breath as global trade ground to a halt. That one event was a stark reminder of how fragile our maritime shipping lanes can be. It highlighted the immense value of having alternative land routes. This is where the BRI's rail links truly shine. Freight trains can now travel from China all the way to Europe in just a couple of weeks, a journey that would take over a month by sea. This isn't just about speed, it's about building resilience into our global economic system. Beyond economics and infrastructure, the cultural spirit of the Silk Road is also being reborn. Take, for instance, the incredible work of Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. This collective of musicians from different countries and traditions comes together to create breathtaking fusion music. They blend instruments and melodies from across the old trade routes. Honoring the rich history of cultural exchange that define the Silk Road, their performances are a living, breathing testament to the idea that collaboration and understanding can create something beautiful and new. At the same time, organizations like UNESCO are working to preserve the physical remnants of this incredible history. They've designated numerous Silk Road sites as World Heritage, protecting ancient cities, cave temples, and remote fortresses. Walking through these places, you can almost hear the whispers of past glories, of the merchants, monks, and soldiers who traveled these same paths centuries ago. These sites are not just relics. They are storytellers, connecting us to a shared human heritage. Geopolitically, the revived Silk Road is redrawing the map of power and influence. Central Asia, a region once seen as a remote backwater, is now at the center of a new great game. Its vast energy resources, oil from Kazakhstan, natural gas from Turkmenistan, are flowing along pipelines that follow these ancient corridors. This flow of energy is not just about economics. It's shaping new alliances and shifting strategic calculations. Countries along the routes are finding themselves with newfound leverage, navigating the interests of global powers like China, Russia, and the United States. The BRI is, in many ways, a vehicle for projecting power, creating a new sphere of influence that challenges the post-Cold War order. However, this modern Silk Road faces a very modern set of challenges, with climate change at the forefront. In the colder regions, melting permafrost threatens to destabilize the very roads and railways being built. In the more arid parts of Central Asia, increasing water scarcity, exacerbated by climate change, poses a significant threat to communities and agriculture along the route. It's a powerful reminder that even the most ambitious infrastructure projects are at the mercy of our planet's changing climate. The resilience that defined the old Silk Road is being tested in new and unprecedented ways. Yet despite these challenges, the story of the Silk Road remains one of incredible adaptation and endurance. It has evolved from a network of dusty trails traversed by camel trains to a system of high-speed railways and fiber-optic cables. This ability to change with the times is perhaps its most enduring legacy. So what can we learn from this long and winding history? The Silk Road teaches us a fundamental lesson. Connectivity is a double-edged sword. It has the power to generate immense prosperity and foster cultural exchange, but it can also lead to conflict, exploitation, and unforeseen perils. It was never just a simple trade path. It was a grand stage for human ambition, a place where greed and curiosity conflict, and cooperation all intertwined to propel progress forward. In today's world, which often feels more divided than ever, the story of the Silk Road serves as a powerful reminder. It tells us that the true value of connection lies not just in the goods we trade, but in the human bonds they forge, the ideas they spread, and the shared understanding they create. As the camel caravans fade into the mists of history, their trails endure, not just as lines on a map, but as guiding paths. They point us toward a future where, hopefully, we can focus more on what connects us than what divides us. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. See you in the next one.